Good evening, and welcome back to the Shadow Gallery. For those who saw my previous post, again, not going to recap too much there. For those who just ignored it, we're going to be talking now about All-Star Superman, the newest release of the DC animated universe films, direct-to-video films. So. Now, in the more recent in the vlog that I just did, I talked about that this was the work that was done on this was Dwayne McDuffie's crowning achievement as a writer, and that's something I don't think is hyperbole at all. This was an extraordinary film. I've seen everything that the DC animated films have had to offer. I've also seen pretty much just about everything that their animated series have had to offer. As far as the films themselves are concerned, there were the one that had recently come out that was a real standout was Batman Under the Red Hood, which was a remarkable piece of an animated film of directly directly adapting a published work onto the screen. Most of them have been like Superman Doomsday. That was pretty literal, but it wasn't very memorable to me. I thought it was their first effort, and there's growing pains, I think, with every company, and they do grow almost by leaps and bounds with each new release. Over the course of the last couple of years, we've had there have been very few things that I would say that were taken directly from, this is directly from a storyline here or a storyline there. There have been, to my count, not including All-Star Superman, there have been three. There were the two Superman Batman films, Superman Batman Public Enemies, and Superman Batman Apocalypse, which were both very good. I enjoyed Public Enemies a little bit more. And of course, Batman Under the Red Hood. But Batman Under the Red Hood was kind of the feather in the cap of how well the DC animated films have been progressing. Because that was a really excellent piece of work. It worked on every level, on an animated level, on a storytelling level, on an emotional level. It was very well done. Grant Morrison, as many of you, well, some of you may be aware, to me has been someone that during my formative years as reading his work was someone that really, I shouldn't say inspired me, but someone that I was a really big fan of. Because, when I first really started seriously collecting comics back in the late 80s, Grant had just done Arkham Asylum, A Serious House, and Serious Earth. Was working also on Animal Man, which were two, the work that he did on Animal Man to this day stands out as some of the premier work of that era. Arkham Asylum, Serious House, and Serious Earth is arguably his best work. And then, things started to take a downturn, I think, for Grant, because things just started to get way too bizarre, with his obvious affection towards, the golden and silver ages of heroes. And the more bizarre that the stories were back then, because when you just couldn't do at that point in time, you couldn't do, well, okay, well, I'm going to fight this villain that or that, I'm gonna, if in the case of Superman, I'm gonna fight Lex Luthor or Toyman or Bizarro or whatever in every issue. You couldn't do that. You couldn't make 6-issue arcs in that point in time. It just wasn't done. That didn't exist until the 60s, really. I mean, it was serialized to a certain extent, but really in the 60s is when it started to become truly serialized with the advent of Marvel, and that they had they wanted to set up specific story arcs for their character. This character will fight this person. So after a while, it became serialized, really and truly. So arcs didn't really exist back then. So he just liked these little individual issues where it was peppered in, the Superman from the Girl of Steel, or the aliens from planet X or whatever. Just weird sci-fi shit like that is what the Silver Age, the gold, the end of the Gold and beginning of the Silver Age comics kind of peppered in. And it's clear that Grant has great affection for that, to a fault with Batman, to a vast success with Superman. All-Star Superman, there were going to be 3. There was going to be an All-Star Wonder Woman in there too, but that, for whatever reason, never happened. There's All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder, which is like it's like the fever dream of Frank Miller and Jim Lee working together to reinterpret a character that Frank Miller has already reinterpreted for a modern era, which to me was like, and actually reading it, it's like reading the ravings of a lunatic. It really is that psychotic. I mean, it's so out there that you can't even begin to describe how, it's like, how does this work? On what level does All-Star Batman and Robin work? It doesn't, but it's like I said about Spartacus recently. It's like crack. I mean, I was still addicted to it because it was Batman he's like Marv from Sin City. It's like his character had become Marv, and Gotham City had become Sin City. So that's how I felt about it. Just reading the dialogue, it's very noirish, and anything that, Frank Miller had already done year 1. So that was already his, definitive interpretation. They don't get more definitive than what Frank Miller's done. So why they brought him on to redefine for this all-star universe was just silly. So unless it was to lay groundwork for, because in moments it does read like it's a prequel to Dark Knight Returns, because there's moments in that are referred to in Dark Knight Returns. So it's kind of his way of prequelizing it. So anyway, back to All-Star Superman. Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, when they worked together, by and large, I didn't really care for their work on X-Men, because it was just, again, a little too crazy. But their work with, things like We Three, if you haven't seen that, which is, his take on the Homeward Bound kind of saga with, the dog, the cat, and the rabbit, all trying to get home, is incredibly emotional. It's incredibly moving. It's incredibly violent. It's incredibly well written. It's just a magical piece of storytelling, and he brings the two of them bring these same sensibilities to All-Star Superman. I know I'm going on about the comic here when I should be covering the film, and I'll get to that in our next segment, which will be after the jump. That will happen in about 30 seconds. But All-Star Superman, like I said, is really, the best thing that Grant Morrison has done in this century. I hope it won't always be that way. I hope he'll do something that will convince me, hey, Grant, is still really got it. And it's, it washes off on everything he does. So in the next, after the jump, we're going to talk about the actual film. Okay, so stick around. We'll be right back.